Hello, Like Mother, Like Murder listeners. I wanted to hop on very quickly before this week's episode and apologize in advance for the audio. As you can tell, my voice is not where it should be, but we did not want to miss a Tuesday drop. On top of that, I recorded live in person with my very own husband, Zach, as a special guest host, and we were sharing a mic, which means the audio is not as crisp as it usually is, but nevertheless, this is a very good case with a very awesome guest host, and we hope you enjoy this week's episode. Captain Lisa Marie Nowak lay in wait, hoping to rid herself of this obstacle that would finally allow her and Billy to find love again. All of her careful preparation had resulted in this moment. But this moment felt light years away from the person she was just 7 months earlier, when she had completed a successful space mission as one of the few women astronauts in the history of the world.
Welcome to Like Mother, Like Murder. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We bring you the good,
The badass.
and the crime.
This is Like Mother, Like Murder. Welcome back to Like Mother, Like Murder, your favorite true crime momcast. I am Rachel. Just kidding. I'm Heather. And each week we bring you mom-related true crime, from missing moms to murdered moms, moms who murder, survivors, and more. And if you couldn't tell, it's not Rachel today. It's Heather and a very special guest.
Hello.
That is the infamous Zach, who you guys have heard me talk about a lot. I think he's been on a few episodes way back when it was still wine time. But Rachel and I have been working very hard at some outside projects. If you have not yet, be sure to check out #OptOutside. That is Rachel's brand new podcast on Momcast Productions. Her first official episode was released yesterday. A link will be in the show notes. And because Rachel is just doing all these things with not only Opt Outside, but other things for Momcast Production, including working on Missing in Hushtown Season 2, we are going to do something a little different today. And I am going to be telling a mom-related true crime to my wonderful, supportive husband, Zach, who I had to beg and plead and cry to come on this episode with me.
I'm very excited.
As you guys might be able to also tell, my voice is dying, but we cannot miss a Tuesday. So we're going to make sure we get this out and on your feeds. And I'm actually very excited to tell the story today because Zach is a big, I don't know if I'd call you a NASA fan, but like a fan of space travel.
Okay.
I think what he's more a fan of is space travel disasters and things that go wrong. Like, he's watched a lot of when airplanes crash. He just finished reading a book about all the things that go wrong when you're trying to climb a mountain. You just started another book about things that go wrong when you're trying to climb a mountain.
Well, when you put it like that, it makes me sound weird. But no, I like complex systems and how they break down, I would say. And, you know, obviously NASA, from the time I was a kid, was something I was always pretty excited about. So I'm excited for this case. If you just told me it was about NASA, it probably would have been a lot easier to get me on from the beginning. But I'm curious to hear what this one's about.
I had to leave a little bit of suspense. Keep you hanging, you know. Just the way I do with the listeners. Well,
and in real life.
Well, no, I don't. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the case. February of 2007, Lisa Nowak drove away from her Houston home, which until just a few months ago she had shared with her husband and 3 kids. Lisa had spent the last decade working in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. Yep, that Space Center, as in Houston, we have a problem, Space Center. Lisa was a full-blown astronaut for NASA. Her Independence Day flight into space had taken place months before. But as she drove away that day, her mission objective had nothing to do with space travel. Her meticulously crafted list didn't include things like spacesuit, emergency kit, radios. Instead, it read knife, BB pistol, ammunition, hammer, gloves, disguise. What happened next would lead to Lisa becoming the first NASA astronaut to ever be arrested. Dun dun dun! No? Okay.
Oh, I'm supposed to be talking too, right?
No, you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
Just be there for me.
Okay.
Okay. Lisa's upbringing was pristine, textbook. Her parents told her she had to be the best. She could never get in trouble. She needed perfect grades. This was the expectation for Lisa and her 2 sisters. She worked hard to please her parents, and eventually the expectation of perfection was internalized. Lisa she needed to be perfect. This is sounding a little autobiographical for me. Lisa continued to be a high achiever, and in high school, she saw Sally Ride become the first woman astronaut, something that would stick in her mind and shape her future plans. She worked hard, excelling in academics and extracurriculars. She was co-valedictorian at her high school before going to the U.S. Naval Academy, where she earned a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering. Impressive.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Is this the lady who wore a diaper?
So yes and no. We'll get to that point of the story, but that's a very contentious piece of the entire story, and I love that there's a whole thing, and the thing that you remember when I told you this is a NASA crime, you specifically asked, is this the lady who wore a diaper?
Well, it's important.
It is important, and it does become a key point in the story. Okay. But I will, to spoiler alert it now, that may have been exaggerated in the media. Damn it. I know.
Okay.
Is that disappointing?
Yes.
It was at the Naval Academy that she'd meet her future husband, Richard, who she'd later marry in 1988. She'd then go on to get her master's in 1992, and that same year, she was selected as a test pilot and became a mother for the first time. Lisa had it all. Her career, her family, and it all came to a head in 1996 when her ultimate goal was finally achieved. NASA called her to don the infamous royal blue astronaut jumpsuit. So Lisa, her young son, and her husband, who would become a comm specialist at Command Center, all moved to Houston, where she and her family seemingly continued to thrive in their beautiful house on their cul-de-sac in their nice, quiet neighborhood just minutes away from the Houston Space Center. Have you ever been to the Houston Space Center?
I have not.
You want to go to that one,
I
though,
do,
right?
though, yeah.
Yeah, so we need to go to Houston.
Yeah, been to Cape Canaveral. That's pretty cool.
That was, and did you saw the space shuttle?
Yeah, I saw it take off. John Glenn was on it.
Oh, fancy.
That's exciting stuff.
Is he actually as attractive as, what's his name from the movie, or no?
Well, he was like 70.
Okay, so no. So,
yeah.
I'll pass. He was on a space flight at 70 years old?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. He went up into space.
He could still pass, like, the physical fitness exams?
Apparently, yeah.
What is it, Space Cowboys?
It was not everything space related is related to Space Cowboys. I don't
know
why
my favorite space movie.
It's not even good.
It's very good. So they were living their life in Houston, and although there was some loss along the way, the family went on to bear it together and overcome. Lisa and her husband, Richard, wanted to grow their family, but they had to fight through fertility issues and miscarriages. But Lisa's lifelong perseverance would continue when she would give birth to twins in 2001. In 2003, Lisa watched in horror, along with the rest of the nation, when her colleagues, including her personal friend, Dr. Laurel Clark, perished aboard the tragic Columbia Space Shuttle disaster. Now, you and I have talked about these space shuttle disasters before, but I can't remember if it was Columbia or Challenger, which was like the whole O-ring situation.
That was Challenger.
That was Challenger. So what was the issue with Columbia?
The heat shield on the bottom of it got messed up when they took off.
Oh.
And so it burned up on re-entry.
Yikes. Not good.
And it was one of those where like they didn't necessarily tell the guys on the shuttle about it because there was nothing they could do.
So they didn't know that they were about to die?
I don't think so.
Which is kind of like messed up because like if you tell them, at least they could give like a final message to their family or something.
I mean, what's the message going to be?
I love you?
Oh, yeah. That's
Wow. So Lisa told NASA, quote, "It's devastating for everybody, and when it's friends, people that you know, it's even harder," end quote. She describes watching the events of that day unfold with her young son by her side, and she said, quote, "He reached over and took my hand and said, 'Mom, I still want you to go,' end quote." Yikes.
He didn't like his mom.
Well, because the thing was, Lisa was actually, so that was in 2003, and Lisa was actually, I believe, scheduled to go on one later that year, but it kept getting delayed because of all the safety concerns and what happened with Columbia. So do you know anything about what they were working through between like 2003 and like 2006-ish? When they were trying to go through all of, like, the safety precautions? Were they just, like, rerunning tests or, like, redoing the spaceship or?
Yeah, I mean, whenever there's a big tragedy like that, they really relook at everything, you know, because a lot of stuff will slip through the cracks because it doesn't cause a problem until it does.
Something I was reading about was, I think, so we mentioned Sally Ride, who I want to do an episode on her at some point. She has nothing really criminal going on in her life.
She's just cool.
She's just the coolest woman I've ever read about. But I believe that she was part of the team that looked at like what went wrong in these. And she had some very choice words to say about them still sending these people up in Challenger and Columbia, knowing that even beforehand they had warning signs that these things were a problem, right?
Yeah.
And they still sent him up.
Yeah, she did that for Challenger, I know.
Challenger. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Sally. So, unfortunately, though, Lisa had to navigate this incredibly traumatic time without the physical presence of her husband, Richard, who was actually deployed at the time. Maybe this was the beginning of their marital troubles, or maybe this was just another nail in the coffin of their decades-long union.
Yeah, sounds like a real dick, huh? Because his name's Richard.
Okay. We're never going to get through this whole thing.
Are you allowed to curse?
Yes.
Okay.
We curse all the time. But if you curse, you have to say, "Sorry, Terry."
Oh.
Because Terry doesn't like the cursing.
Okay. Well, I'll try not to curse for Terry's sake.
That's nice. So, Richard and Lisa had agreed to stay married until she completed her space mission, which, like I said, kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed, in part because of Columbia and then all the other safety concerns. But right when the space program was on its last legs, Lisa and her crew completed a textbook orbit with the Independence Day Discovery Space Shuttle launch in 2006. Lisa was a mission specialist in robotics on this launch, and she spent almost 2 weeks in space.
Did they agree to stay married because they were worried that if she was going through a divorce, they wouldn't want to send her up?
I assume that's the reason, right? Because before you go up, like, obviously astronauts have to go through crazy background. This is what's so, and we'll talk about it a little more, but like, they have to go through crazy background checks, psychological checks and stuff, and especially as their mission would get closer, right, that would happen even more. They put them through the ringer almost, right, psychologically, to make sure they're not going to freak out in space. But yeah, so I assume, and because he's also, part of the program, he probably also wants to make sure, like, he's a comm specialist. He wants to make sure, like, nothing's gonna mess with their, so that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So Lisa returned to Earth, and she seemed to have a brand new lease on life. Within the next few months, Richard would move out, and Lisa would start seeing a new man, Billy Oefelein. Oefelein. Oefelein?
I don't know.
I'm going to be referring to him as Billy.
Guy sounds like a real dick.
Why did I just have deja vu? But not of like the last time you just said it, of you making that joke again when it doesn't make any sense. Okay. Billy was a fellow NASA astronaut who would also go on to complete his first space mission in 2006. Lisa and Billy began as colleagues, first meeting in 1996. Then they became friends. And when they first started spending a lot of time together in 2004, they were both still married to other people. But as often happens, it blossomed into something more. In 2005, Billy's wife filed for divorce, and as we know, Lisa and Richard were already struggling, eventually separating in 2006 after she returned from her space mission. While maybe Lisa believed this was all falling into place exactly how it was supposed to, just like preparing for a mission to space, her family disagreed. Lisa had held off telling her family about her separation and the new man in her life, and when they did find out, they were not celebrating this liftoff of a new relationship. Do you see what I did there? It's pretty good, right? This was against everything Lisa's mission-perfect life had stood for. Her mother actually stopped speaking to her when she found out.
It's kind of messed up.
It is messed up. But the parents expected perfection, right? And I read something that said that the parents were worried about the backlash that this would have on them. Like, where they still live. Yeah, it was pretty fucked up.
Who cares about them?
They're not a fucking astronaut, are they?
I feel like once you go to space, you could stop caring about what your parents think.
You'd think.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa kind of did, because she kind of said, screw you, Mom. It doesn't matter to me because I still have Billy. But what Lisa did not see was the countdown clock on the relationship with Billy. T-minus 3, 2, 1, abort mission. Do you see what I did there?
Well, you don't count down to an abort like you would just say abort.
Stop being a nerd. Billy completed a successful space mission in December of 2006, but his continued relationship with Lisa was a failure to launch.
I'm leaving.
Billy was upfront with Lisa, telling her that he was seeing someone else and it was the right stuff. Was that you leaving?
That was me walking out.
Billy had become romantically involved with Colleen Shipman, a 30-year-old U.S. Air Force captain and engineer based at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Oh.
In front of Billy and the public, Lisa took it in stride, head held high, but in private, she was a mess. Her whole mission had been scrapped. I think that's the end of my space puns. She was erratic. She couldn't sleep. She was losing weight. Not the attributes of a successful astronaut, and it showed in her work. And to add insult to injury, NASA informed Lisa that not only would she not be chosen for an upcoming mission, she'd most likely never go up again after fellow space travelers described her as uncooperative and prickly. Oh, I do have one more. Complete mission failure. Yep.
Yeah, but would a male astronaut be called uncooperative and prickly?
No.
I don't think
It
so.
wouldn't happen. I also feel that there has, in the history of NASA, you'll see what the situation is. There had to have been another situation like this. And it's crazy to me that I already said it, so it's not a spoiler, that, she was the first NASA astronaut ever arrested. I'm like, there's no way. There's a bunch of male astronauts that had to have at some point gotten this close to being, arrested and charged, but, they swooped in and made sure it didn't happen.
Yeah, especially in the 60s in Florida, they were driving drunk all the time.
That's what I'm saying. It's pretty bullshit.
Yeah.
So Lisa would not be deterred. She just needed to organize, strategize, and plan. Something she had been doing her whole life. She trained in emergency procedures and troubleshooting system malfunctions. So she began her preparations. From her work computer, she retrieved MapQuest directions, from Houston to Orlando. She purchased a knife, a BB gun, some pepper spray, and from Billy's own apartment and using his own stationery, she got the flight itinerary of his new girlfriend, Colleen Shipman's upcoming arrival to Orlando.
Don't forget she also bought diapers.
I will get to that part. She didn't actually buy diapers. Lisa also retrieved Colleen's phone number that she had found from the repeated calls on Billy's phone bill. Using her own astronaut flight events, history, and briefing stationery, like any good astronaut worth their salt, she wrote out, reviewed, and studied the things she would need. Knife, BB pistol, ammunition, hammer, plastic gloves, disguise, and cash. A lot of cash.
And?
No, I will tell you about the diapers. With this cash, she also went to a local grocery store and bought a phone card with 100 minutes. She knew to leave her cell phone at home. It could be tracked. She knew on the almost 900-mile and 16-hour drive, she did not want to risk a lot of exposure. She'd pee off the side of the road to limit people seeing her at rest stops. Now, we can talk about your diapers. So, as Zach has mentioned now several times, there's this whole part of the story where people believe that she wore, because astronauts in space wear, space diapers, because you can't just, pee all the time in your suit. Tell the story of the astronaut. Didn't you tell me the story of the astronaut who was, right before liftoff, and he's like, I have to pee, and they, had to run, scenarios and just tell him to pee in his suit?
Yeah, that was, Alan Shepard, I think. They just told him to go for it. And then it pooled in his back.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
So, people have honed in, and it was part of the headlines of this story, was an astronaut used space diapers on this road trip so she wouldn't have to stop to pee. But there is conflicting things, because the articles that I have read, and this is according to what she told police, so take that with what you will, is that she actually had some regular, just baby-sized diapers, because she had young kids, that were still in the back of her car. And so she would pull over, pee into the diaper, and then, tie it up and leave it. She didn't sit in her pee astronaut diaper for the entire time.
Is that any less weird, though?
No. It's not.
That's still pretty weird.
You're right. I don't know which is more or less weird.
When you first said it, I thought you meant she was, just hanging out the side of her car and peeing, and I was like, that's even weirder.
No.
I remember that way more than I remember the lady at a rest stop.
Oh, God. Okay, do you have any more diaper questions?
No, I think you've answered all of them. Thank you. What brand?
That's something you'd have to ask Lisa. So, She'd pee in diapers on the side of the road instead of going to rest stops. She checked into a hotel under a fake name and paid all in cash. And when she arrived in Orlando, she didn't park at the airport. She was too smart. She had planned this too well. Instead, she parked at a hotel nearby and used the airport shuttle. She made quick work of locating Colleen, whose flight had arrived around 1 a.m. She followed her from the terminal onto the parking shuttle bus and then all the way to where Colleen had parked her car. Lisa had been preparing her whole life. She had gone through years of training. She had been one of the few who had been in outer space, damn it, and she would not be left floating like a piece of space junk. I guess that wasn't my last space point. It had all culminated to this moment. With her disguise in place, a wig, sunglasses, and a trench coat, she approached Colleen while Colleen was getting into her car. And after banging on the window, asking for a ride, and there was some back and forth words exchanged between the two women. Colleen, obviously hesitant, eventually rolled down her window, and this is when Lisa sprayed the pepper spray and attempted to enter Colleen's vehicle. But Colleen gunned it, full speed ahead. Is that a space thing? No. Like Star Trek? Star Wars?
Sure.
Colleen fled the attack, luckily unharmed, but obviously shaken. She quickly called the police, who made quick work of picking up Lisa, who was attempting to jettison her wig and BB gun in a garbage can. That's space talk.
So she planned this out for like months, and her plan was to try to stab somebody while they were in a running car.
So this is what's so hard is when she goes to trial, they obviously find all of this preparation stuff. I mean, she map quested on her work computer. She broke into either she had a key, maybe she still had a key, but she got into his apartment, used his stationery, started writing all these things down. Now, I guess you can burn paper, but like they found her writing all these things down. They found her doing all this stuff. And then, you know, she's taking all these precautions. She's not stopping at restaurants. She's paying in cash. She's not parking at the airport. She's gonna, you know, use a shuttle, so it's harder to track. But, like, apparently Colleen noticed her right away, like, saw her following her, too, and was like, who the fuck's this lady? And didn't want to roll down the window at all. Started to slowly roll it down, and then, yeah, all she does is spray pepper spray, and then I guess she even later told the cops, like, it was stupid of me to just try to spray pepper spray. Like, I don't know why she waited all the way until the car to, I don't know. Yeah, it didn't seem that well planned out.
Was her plan to murder her? Was that the idea?
So initially, Lisa told the police that she was just there to confront Colleen over the fact that they had both been dating Billy. But all of the evidence obviously pointed to more than that. So Lisa was initially charged with attempted murder and kidnapping. So, I mean, she had a BB gun. She had a knife. These are all of the preparations. It did seem a little bit more involved than just going up to someone and confronting them. During the trial, Colleen asked the judge to sentence Lisa to jail time, claiming Lisa's intent to harm. A quote from Colleen in court stated, "She was going to kill me. It was in her eyes, a blood-chilling expression of limitless rage and glee."
I thought she was wearing sunglasses.
Maybe they fell off during the struggle. Good point.
What's up with that, Colleen?
Come on, Colleen, get your story straight. But ultimately, a plea deal was struck and charges were eventually reduced to burglary and just a misdemeanor. So in 2009, she pled guilty and she was sentenced to just a year of probation, which I feel like is a pretty light sentence.
Yeah, although she would have done fine in prison.
Why do you say that?
With her unique peeing habits, I think she would have adjusted pretty well.
I don't know where this episode went wrong. In one of her only public statements, Lisa issued this apology to Colleen. Quote, I know this has been very hard for Colleen Shipman, and I would like her to know how very sorry I am for having frightened her in any way, and about the subsequent public harassment that has followed all of us. Ultimately, Lisa and Richard finalized their divorce, and in 2010, she received an other than honorable discharge from the Navy, obviously. And today she still lives in Texas, and she tries to maintain a private life, putting the past behind her and not giving interviews, although her attorney has stated that she's in a better place and she's, quote, doing well. Luckily, there was a successful outcome. Billy and Colleen stayed together and eventually got married and started a family, moved to Alaska. And I really do hope the best for everyone involved, because when this happened, Lisa still had, like, young kids still in the house. In fact, the weekend that she started on this road trip, they were actually spending the weekend with their dad. So you just kind of hope that they were able to get back to some kind of normalcy. And did you know that Lisa's story was reportedly the inspiration behind the 2019 Natalie Portman movie, Lucy in the Sky?
I obviously knew that.
You did. So although many involved want to ensure people are aware of this, that it is a very loose adaptation to Lisa Nowak's true story. They do not mention diapers in the movie, I don't think. So that answers your question. But one thing I wanted to loop back around about, because we kind of mentioned it before, right? When both coming up to like a space mission and then immediately following, right? They send these astronauts through like a lot of psychological testing, right? Because they know the psychological stuff it can cause you in space, even if your mission goes perfect, right? Which apparently Lisa's did. So my question is, like, how did they not tag that something was going on?
Well, I mean, it's the one test that you can try to fake,
yeah.
Right? Like you
can run a mile,
lung capacity,
yeah,
right?
True.
And also, I mean, it sounds like she had a lot of experience hiding her true feelings from people and pretending everything was fine even when it wasn't. It sounded like her whole life was like that. So, I mean, at a certain point, there's only so much they can do.
It's true.
So
it's true.
You feel kind of bad for her.
I do kind of. I mean, I obviously don't condone anyone planning a murder or even planning a obviously violent confrontation, if anything, if you have a BB gun and a knife with you. But her whole life was kind of like falling apart. Seemingly, she went up to space, and I think that they talked about, in some of the articles I read, that she took the Columbia really hard. You know, she had colleagues on that flight, and like one of her close personal friends was on it, and then one of the articles I read said she grew these specific type of flowers around her house that had actually been, I think, gifted to her by the friend that was on Columbia, and you know that she took that really tough. But then, you know, she's back, and she herself goes up like 3 years later, and then I think just like going back, you can see that a lot of her marital problems had been in between that time. And, you know, just dealing with the fact that after Columbia, the space program was dealing with a lot, right? They were on, like, damage control. And a successful mission was probably, like, a lot of pressure to make sure that things went well. So,
yeah, and I'm sure, you know, she reframed herself after her divorce that actually this was the real success, so she wasn't a failure. And then Billy was like, peace. Broke something in her, I guess. I
think, and what's hard is when you read it, he admitted to having like a romantic relationship and like dating her and stuff, but he it was never like to him anything like super serious. And when he told Lisa about Colleen, I guess she even was like, okay, well, you know, we can still be friends. I guess they wanted to train together for a bike ride or some triathlon or something. And so, you know, she's, like you said, she's putting on this really strong front, and it's, you know, but inside she's imploding like a space shuttle.
I'm always a little confused too, because like, why wouldn't she try to murder Billy?
You know, I think she blamed Colleen, and if she, like, that's always the case, like, they're blaming the other woman for getting in the way.
Where's the solidarity? That's what I'm asking.
I know. Women support women, man. Lisa,
Yeah.
you should know this. You're a female in a male-driven field. You've got this other female who, by all accounts, I mean, she was 30-year-old, what they say, like Air Force captain or something like that. Another woman thriving in a male-dominated field. Like, you guys have to have each other's backs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Preach.
It's fucked up, Lisa. You're supposed to say, louder for those in the back.
No,
okay, that's fine. So what did you think, Zach, about being on your first real crime episode for Like Mother, Like Murder?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, we won't be having you on again anytime soon.
It's probably for the best.
But I do very much appreciate you coming on today, because otherwise it would just be me by myself, and I don't think I would do very well doing that. I appreciate you stepping out of your comfort zone. And I think that this episode is going to be a top rated.
I think so.
Yeah. So even though, you know, you're not a normal guest host, if the listeners want to have you back, can we count on you?
Probably not.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
You, even though you don't religiously listen to every episode as a supportive husband should, do you know how we sign off our episodes?
Okay, I love you, bye.
Good, but not yet. I have to sign us off first, and then you can say it. Okay. So that was this week's episode about Lisa Nowak. I'm currently playing around with titles. Zach's supposed to help me about this. But right now I'm leaning towards Houston. We have a romantic rivalry. If that ends up being the title of this episode, you guys know that I came up with it all by myself. But if it ends up being something else, it's because Zach thought of it. And again, Zach, thank you for joining us on today's episode. Make sure you guys check out Opt Outside. And for those of you who still are not part of our Patreon supporters club or Apple subscriber, that is where you can get ad-free and early episodes and bonus content. Now more than ever, if you have not, please consider supporting the show. We are trying to raise funds for our upcoming Crime Con trip, where we want to do some very important advocacy work for some cases that are very near and dear to our hearts. But until then, we hope you have an amazing week. Okay, love you, bye!
Well, see you later.
I'm just gonna cut in your "I love you" bye.
But you're gonna cut off.
What we were just talking about?
Yeah.
No.
Oh. I don't know how this works.
I'll cut some of it.
Really, most of the time when you're doing this is my video game time, so I'm not super paying attention. So
I know you don't, and you don't listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I do.
No, you don't.
I was just listening to the other day.
What was our last
on one
case
of my
about?
runs. There was a murder and it had a mom in it.
Good guess.
Yeah.
Good guess.